You may be aware that here in the US, we experienced some really deadly, destructive, and traumatizing hurricanes this season. I'm thinking especially of Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. And I'm especially aware of these because I live in Florida. Helene caused really massive destruction up the western coast of Florida, even in areas where it just ran parallel 160 miles out in the Gulf before it turned in up, toward the Big Bend of Florida and cut across Florida into Georgia and Tennessee and North Carolina. And North Carolina was inexplicably hit incredibly hard. And the death toll is still, even weeks later, climbing as they continue to uncover bodies. And those that survived are still out there. It's just incredible what they're up against, and they lack the resources they need. So it's a really serious situation. Now, I live literally 5 miles inland from where Hurricane Milton made landfall. And in the aftermath of everything, both of those hurricanes, I did a lot of reflecting, as I tend to do. And I was looking for the lessons in it all, because that's kind of where my brain goes as I'm reflecting on these things. And in the process of that, God pointed out to me that narcissistic abuse is like a destructive hurricane. It leaves trauma and devastation in its wake. And just like what they're facing up in North Carolina, that can last a really, really long time in terms of what it takes to rebuild, especially if you don't have the resources you need to do it. And as we here, my daughter and I got involved in helping with the cleanup process, I had 5 realizations that came to me. And these realizations applied not only practically in the moment, but also as it pertained to healing from narcissistic abuse. And by the way, a couple of years ago, while developing the NARC encounter spectrum, I found myself classifying the spectrum in terms of narcissists and the impacts they have as category 1 or 2, 3, and 4 up the spectrum. So if you haven't already downloaded it, I'd encourage you to go to AnnetteChesney.com/overview and grab that download. It's a free download, but I think you'll find it incredibly insightful in terms of what you can take away from that. And what I hear from people over and over again when they see this is it's very validating to them. So I encourage you to go get that. It's AnnetteChesney.com/overview. All right. So let's take a look at the first of these 5 realizations. And the first one that I realized is, when in doubt, get out. And I have a personal rule that any hurricane that's projected to come over my head at a Cat 3 level or higher is way too dangerous and unpredictable. And my best course of action is not to stand there and try to brace myself for the storm. I just need to get out of its way. And if you take a look at the Cat 3 narcissists on that NARC encounter spectrum I just mentioned to you, you'll see what's listed there. You'll see why. So sometimes people choose to stay and ride out a Cat 3 hurricane. And sometimes they choose to stay with a Cat 3 narcissist. So Wendy, I really value your thoughts on this. Based on your experience in working with people, why would people choose to stay and just brace themselves and ride out a storm at this kind of level?
Well, a lot of times people don't realize how bad it's going to get.
Mm-hmm.
They have a good guess. I'm a Midwestern girl, and I've gone
Mm-hmm.
through multiple tornadoes, and there are times where it's really not that bad, and other times where you walk out and you're like, oh, wow, I feel really lucky that this didn't go right by my house.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times people hope to be one of the lucky ones. They hope that what they have is enough to withstand the storm. They don't think the storm is really that bad. And sadly, there are people out there where bad weather's normal and sunny days are rare. And
Mm-hmm.
so the type of behavior in that storm, like we were talking about, just seems like a normal average day. So
Right.
that's just what life is like. So why would you go anywhere else? And for some people, it's, I can't get out. I've got no money, or I've got kids, or if I were to leave, the legal ramifications of that would be
Uh-huh.
horrific. Maybe I'm safer if I stay. Who knows? At least I know what this is like. So
Right.
there's so many reasons, and that can be as different as the person involved in that category 3
Mm-hmm.
storm or category 3 narc. There's a lot of reasons that people can't even consider leaving or think they can't consider leaving.
Right. Right. And it's so dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they don't realize the level of danger that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
They don't realize, like you were saying, if you've lived through it a lot,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes living in the destructive wake
Mm-hmm.
of a cat 3 narcissist feels normal.
And
They've
some
forgotten what the
people hold,
sunshine's like.
yeah, or they hold out the hope that they can make it better if they just keep trying harder.
Yes.
So even
Yeah.
if they know it's been bad, it's like, I can hold the door closed, I can hold the window up, I can, whatever it is, like I can keep the roof on. There's so many things that people think they have power or control over or hope they do if they just keep
Uh-huh.
trying or try harder, that
Right.
they really don't, but
Right.
they keep trying.
And I've heard people say, like, I'm going to tough it out. And with
Mm-hmm.
narcissists, well, I just have to be stronger.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I have to withstand this. And they
And
don't give
it's not.
themselves permission for something better.
Well, in hurricanes, I've never lived through a hurricane, but I've always heard there's an eye where things
Uh-huh.
calm
Uh-huh.
down and seem a little normal, right? And you know what
Mhm.
that's like. I've heard about what that's like, but it seems like everything gets really calm and steady and the wind stops, and I think, does the rain even stop? I'm not even.
Yes, I where I was living before where I'm at now,
Mhm.
we had, and this goes back a number of years, we had like 3 different storms that crisscrossed Florida at different angles, and all 3 of them, or 2 of the 3, wound up coming over my head. And I remember the one storm was during the day, and one was during the night when it went over. And during the day one, I'll never forget it, because the house that I was in had a big pond out
Mhm.
behind it. It was in a subdivision. Here in Florida, you have retention ponds everywhere because we
Yeah.
sit so low. So every development is built with a big old retention pond and everything that fills up. So it's like a
Yeah.
little baby lake
Well,
that's
that's where the
there.
alligators go, right?
Yeah, wildlife comes to it and everything. It's kind
Yeah.
of nice. I enjoy it. But I had one, like a 20-acre one, right out behind my house in the neighborhood that I was in. And
Mhm.
I remembered as the storm came over, the wind was so high that it looked like you were at the beach, like oceanside, because it was white capped waves rolling. And then as the eye passed over, it got very calm. The sun was shining. You could look up and see blue sky. It was just amazing. And that's, people have died because they don't realize they're in the eye of the storm. And then the
Mhm.
backside of it comes over it. And people have died that way. And I remember, I knew it was the eye, but I just went over
Mhm.
and was marveling at just like a marked contrast to
Yeah.
where it's just gray and like freaky outside with what's going on, completely calm, sunshiny, blue sky. And then as it keeps moving, then you get the other side of that eye. And what was weird is then the winds came from the opposite direction. I didn't expect that.
Oh.
And all the waves on the pond now had
Mhm.
that same effect, but rolling in the opposite direction.
Wow.
And I mean, that's a cool metaphor for when we're dealing with narcissistic abuse. We think we
Mhm.
understand it in a certain way, and then they come back and hit us from a different angle that we weren't expecting to
Well,
send
and
us
they
off.
also know that you need that eye of the storm, so to speak, the gaslighting or the
Yes,
the
it keeps you in the
drawing.
game.
Keeps you in the game.
Uh-huh.
So it's really easy if you've had a couple eye of the storms pass over you to remember it was good then. It was bright and sunshiny and happy and birds were singing or whatever metaphor
Right,
we want to
right.
use. And it'll be like that again. It's not always windy and dangerous with choppy waves, right?
Uh-huh.
So yeah. So there's reasons people stay
Right.
for sure.
So there's some key things we need to think about here.
Hmm.
And in terms of future proofing your life from future storms, because there's always going to
Hmm.
be storms, even though you're away from the narcissist now, praise God that you're away from the narcissist,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean there won't be other unhealthy people that you'll run
Mm-mm,
across, or other
mm-mm,
life circumstances
mhm.
that catch you off guard and feel like a storm. So what are some of the things we can do to sort of future-proof us
Mhm.
that we can
Well,
manage that better?
yeah, in the same way that you would walk out after a storm and look around and see, well, that tree's leaning over after all this wind. I can't leave it there. I have to
Mm-hmm.
be able to pull things out. There's probably things in life that are not healthy and that could cause you problems, that either habits of thinking or
Mm-hmm.
patterns or maybe some money problems. Maybe you need to do some budgeting, or things can be very practical, but
Mm-hmm.
you need to have a chance to pull out things that could cause you problems later and make
Mm-hmm.
sure they're not there when that storm comes in. And you also have to know your own value when you do that. A lot of times when you have hard work, you need a why. And the why
Mm-hmm.
is that you are valuable and you are worth prepping for the storm and preparing for the storm and making sure the house you are in is sturdy and can take some battering. And
Right.
so, yeah, getting ready for the future storms by getting rid of that debris, knowing your why, that you're valuable and worth it. There's both of those are really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could add one onto that. Just like I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned at the beginning, that I had long ago made a decision that any storm Cat 3 or above coming over my head, I
Mm-hmm.
was out of there. I
Yep.
wasn't going to ride that out. I was out of there. So the idea of knowing your own values, your own convictions about
Yes.
certain issues or where you
Yes.
stand on things,
And what
that
you'll allow and won't, right?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, that was my line in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't going to, wipe that line away and, well,
No.
maybe I'll stay and hang a little bit more with this. I just said,
Yeah.
this is the line. We're not going to cross
Mm-hmm.
this line right here. And I learned from that line the hard way after going through storms in the natural. And
Yeah.
I saw the power of it. And I just went, holy guacamole. This is not to be trifled with.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you make it through a storm because you stayed in it and you made it through, that doesn't mean you'll make it through the next one. So it's better to be wise on those things. So you need to know, like, what are your lines in the sand, on where you stand on things. So join us tomorrow as we talk about how to acquire the tools and skills you need to rebuild stronger than ever before. Remember, we're with you on this journey to provide some guidance and wisdom. We're always going to challenge you to grow, just like we challenge ourselves. So throughout this week, you can reach out to us with your questions and thoughts by emailing hello@AnnetteChesney.com. And please help out this podcast, by the way, by clicking the like and subscribe and share this episode around too. Check out our show description because we've got some great resources available for you there with some links. But we want to encourage you to, whatever you're dealing with right now, just know that it's worth it to keep taking the next right step because your best is yet to come. We'll see you tomorrow.